that was loud. Welcome to Strasburg, Pennsylvania, home of the Pennsylvania Railroad Museum. Years ago, this locomotive, if I can get the camera to work right here, (4859). Actually, hang on a second. 4859 is at the Transportation Center in Harrisburg. So it's actually not this one. But years ago, they decided that the GG-1, which was one of the most successful locomotives ever to run the Northeast Corridor, was going to continue running. A number of rail fans got together and they started the Friends of the GG-1, also called FOG, and they restored this locomotive, well, not this one, but one that is actually labeled 4835 and nicknamed Blackjack, was brought to full restoration and allowed to continue running until they had, I believe it was a transformer breakdown, and then it went into the museum to preserve it. But imagine if they had a lot more money, enough to actually repair the locomotive and put it into private service. And Amtrak decided that it was okay to run private trains again. This is a recreation of what that might like. Oh my gosh, what that might look like. So we're in the train hangar in Pennsylvania, which is exactly where Blackjack is right now. It's within the building confines. And we hooked it up to Strasburg 90, which is able to run the route. We can't drive the GG-1 right now because there's no electric overhead line. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to get this puppy onto the main line via locomotive 90, and then we're going to have the GG-1 take over. We're going to go all the way to New York City. So let's get started. So the first step is to get this locomotive out to the Strasburg railway station, which is where people get picked up to go on the railroad. This sucker is really heavy. The GG-1, I think, weighs something like 600,000 pounds. And we're at 60% regulator now just to get this train moving. Sure we got the whole train? Yep, we got the whole train. should be able to get the train up to speed. The reason this is fun is because we're starting out from a museum, and assuming we successfully get this thing out on the main line and up to speed up to New York, we could reach 100 miles per hour, maybe even more. Okay, we're good to go. So eventually we will reach the main line. We're quite a ways from it right now. We're up to speed now. I'm going to close the cylinder cocks. We've got a boost here. I think we're set to go out on the main line now. Look at that for realism. Dark signal. just realized we have no tender. That might be an issue. The main reason I missed a tender was because when you build a consistent train simulator, you typically have an option of electric locomotives, steam locomotives, or diesel locomotives. And the issue is the tenders don't show up in the locomotive section. They actually show up in the freight car section. So you don't think to add them. Slow now, but we'll be going 100 miles an hour later. And so what we're essentially going to do is we're going to take this out to Paradise, which is where we link up with the Harrisburg to Philadelphia main line. We're going to have the locomotive cut loose. We'll power up the GG-1. We'll make sure everything is good, and then we will pull out onto the main tracks and accelerate to track speed. So while we are driving on our way to Philadelphia, I will talk a little bit about the history of this locomotive, and then when we get out to the northeast corridor between Philadelphia and New York, I'll talk about the history of the GG-1. We're losing boiler pressure, and I'm not exactly sure why. I have coal shoveling rate at 100%. I have the blower full open. We're still losing boiler pressure. We should be pretty close to the main line now. You know, maybe the problem is we're smothering the fire. It says we're producing 62,000 pounds of steam per hour and we're using 6,000, and yet our boiler pressure is decreasing. This makes no sense. It's the main line, finally. Good, let's let this thing coast and get back some boiler pressure. By the way, kilograms force per centimeter square is a horrible unit. They need to use Pascal. Come on, almost there. Okay, we need to start thinking about where we're going to leave the steam engine. I'm thinking we stop, move forward, drop it off right here, and then power the GG-1 right here, reverse, and then go forward again. All right, we're in business. Forgot about the damper. I hope that does something. Alright, this is where we leave the steam train. Business. We're gonna have to wait quite some time for the main reservoir to charge up. Should be almost finished now. The GG-1 is a tough beast, so it should be no issue getting started, but we can talk more about that later. we're under power. One thing that I really like about the GG-1 is it's allowed to 100 miles per hour, which is exactly where the stop on the speedometer is. So, what other vehicle do you know of where you get to max out your speedometer? Not the train, your speedometer. We have a clear signal to do the track speed, which right now is 90 miles per hour. By the way, up top here, these are ammeters. They are reading in amps. Yes, this train can produce 3,500 amps. Okay, so in Train Simulator, this is number 4859, which is the locomotive that's in the Harrisburg Transportation Center right now. But what we are simulating is the return to service of Pennsylvania Railroad 4935, nicknamed Blackjack. Currently it's preserved, and it's inside the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania at Strasburg. It is protected inside a railroad hangar that is heated and air conditioned, so it's not going anywhere anytime soon. And by that, I mean falling apart. You know, in some other words, you know, it's still fine. And here is our lovely steam locomotive. pretty soon the Strasburg Railroad will pick it up and bring it back in. All right, let's go. So we'll get into more about what the GG-1 was, but in short, the GG-1 was for long passenger trains and high speed. In short, this is a power train. It was originally designed for the Northeast Corridor, and it arrived at the same time as the very electrification which we're currently driving under. So this train was made for this catenary. That's the purpose of its existence. This particular number was constructed in 1943 in Juniata, and it was one of the final GG-1s to be built. On the lookout for gap interlocking. There is a speed restriction that we're actually going to have to worry about. So we are cleared to do 90 miles an hour until gap, and then we have to slow down to 55. Okay, there's gap. Bring it down to 55. We're about to enter the Lehigh Valley. Okay, this curve is a 55, the one after is an 80. We go back up to 90 again. Almost 2,000 amps. Incredible. This curve here is a 75. And we're good until we get to Park Interlocking. Okay, so more about this locomotive. After a nice 30-year career, in 1976, a man by the name of Howard Sirrig, who happened to be a rail enthusiast and U.S. Department of Transportation economist, decided to ask. Pennsylvania Railroad had folded by that time and become Penn Central. He wanted to know about restoring a GG-1 to its original condition. Penn Central said, "Get out of here." And he was not happy. So he then wrote about it in a column for Trains Magazine. You know, hey, restore this thing. It's awesome. And then a friend brought it to newly formed Amtrak president of Amtrak, and then he decided to approve the plan in 1977, and there you go. Blackjack was restored. I need to find Park Interlocking. Oh. 90 miles an hour. That snuck up on me. Now I won't have to slow down until milepost 32. So within days of the president of Amtrak approving that plan, that was when the FOG, Friends of the GG-1 Committee, was assembled, and its job was to coordinate funding from the National Railway Historical Society chapters. I love this stuff. It sounds almost like, you know, weird pentagram stuff that, you know, they're going to bring back this beast using lots of money in secret societies and stuff. So the man who designed the shape of the GG-1 itself, Raymond Lowery, actually enlisted as the chairman. How cool is that? The guy who decided this is what the GG-1 looks like became directly involved as the head of the project. Amazing. So using lots of let's donate to the Church of the GG-1, they raised $10,000 in 2 months and then signed the money over to Amtrak. Whoa, I'm speeding. The reason they chose Blackjack of all ones is because it had its original number and as well as the air intakes, and it was also taken care of up until that time. Keep in mind, you know, these trains were like 40 years old at the time. So in 1977, restoration took place in Wilmington, just east of Wilmington. We're not going to be driving by that today. They had to replace truck bearings, which, since we're driving, geez, I'm going fast. Like I said, speed is no problem for the GG-1. I can talk about more about this on the second leg of our journey, but I think I've talked about the T1. The GG-1 is the electric version of the T1. Okay, so down here, these guys right here, these are the truck bogies. So these guys were replaced. They also replaced the blower, which, you know, I talked about the blower driving the steam train, but in an electric train, the blower cools the transformer, and the GG-1 actually has an oil-cooled transformer. More on that later. Although this particular boil was used for the steam heating on the passenger cars. Okay, so that's a different type of boiler then. So then they grit blasted. I don't know what river this is. That actually bugs me. Which river is this? Probably like Brandywine Creek or the Schuylkill River or something like that. So then they grit blasted the locomotive, primed and painted this current paint scheme that you see on the locomotive with 5 golden stripes on it. The entire process was finished on May 9th of 1977 for a cost of $8,712, which was paid via check. And Amtrak decided that they were going to take a hit to the repair costs. Although it's a great idea, I think that was a mistake on the part of Amtrak, because in the 80s, Amtrak was having trouble trying to attract people to the railroad. This was before the successful Metroliner and the Acela Express and the Coast Starlight and the, what's it called? The Cascades, which are very good at getting people nowadays. And they tested the locomotive in Perryville, which is the end of the Mark Penn line. And on May 15th, it went into service with a rededication ceremony and then continued with the Murray Hill. We have a approach indication. Advanced approach. So we're going all the way down to 30 miles per hour. Holy cow, slow down. It'll make me think an angle cock is open. Miles to Philadelphia. This is what I slowed down for. A siding coming onto the main. Jeez, it's crazy. Clear. Unfortunately, this locomotive only lasted 3 years in its newly refurbished state. It made its last run as the Silver Star or the Silver Meteor, depending on direction at the time. So apparently the transformer broke down in 1980, which would have costed about $80,000 at the time to fix. And they decided that it wasn't worth it. So Amtrak sold it for the lovely sum of $5,000 to a member of the FOG named Russell Wilcox. And then he proceeded to donate it to the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, which is where it sits today. Oh, they're not in my simulation. Not anymore. So if you have $80,000, you can repair this transformer. It looks slow now, but if we had a more realistic train simulator, you would be able to see this thing basically rocks back and forth like crazy. It's a little bit like riding a... imagine towing a skateboard behind a Jeep on a gravel road. That's how this thing rides. And it's perfectly fine with it. Look at this power. We're basically holding speed at 85 miles an hour up a 1% grade, and I'm not even at full power. That guy really wanted to hear my horn. Well, these guys sure know I'm coming. Got some curves coming up ahead. Open that. Who opened that? Love how it says don't open and it's open. There are babies at every station in this simulator. So Paoli nowadays marks the western end of the SEPTA line that runs out west of Pennsylvania, or Philadelphia. We are also going to lose the 138 kilohertz towers, and we'll transition to a lower voltage on the way in. Philadelphia now. It's at milepost 2, so we're just about 13 miles out. You 1950s people with all your radioactive waste. Of note, Blackjack is not alone at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania. Its company is 4800, which is the actual prototype GG-1, and it was put together not with welding, but with rivets. So it has been nicknamed Old Rivets. And that locomotive is very famous for breaking a number of speed records on the Northeast Corridor, including fastest train, fastest run between New York City and Washington. Yeah, it's had quite a history to it. idea how to pronounce that name. My only guess would be Sinwid, but that's a very strange way to spell Sinwid. That was a pretty cool perspective. That is an actual car commercial. I can't believe they can put that in here. It's a real car rental place. Coming into zoo now, so we're gonna start getting really slow again. according to plan, we will be on Philadelphia Track 8. Advanced approach going down to 30 miles an hour. My gosh, there's like zero clearance between us and the top of the tunnel. Call that a monumental achievement that I was able to do that all in one go. Didn't even know I had the throttle open. One day I'll explore that railroad. I'm afraid to ask why it sounds like there are sheep in the river. Look at this mess. This is why the speed limit is 15 miles per hour and why it takes forever to get through this interlocking. Try and make that a little bit more realistic. Dadgummit, GG-1's getting a workout. 65% throttle to get up that hill. Okay, so we're not going in on track 8. But we will be able to go in on 7, so that's close enough. Okay, we're going to sit here for a few minutes. And then we're going to continue on to New York. Okay, it's been a couple of minutes now, and we're pretty much ready to depart. The number has changed now to 4824, and 4824 is not preserved. This locomotive was eventually scrapped. But one fantastic thing to note is that the sounds that you were hearing earlier, those weren't the sounds of the real authentic GG-1. This is what the real GG-1 sounds like. Isn't that just amazing? I had to think about it for a long time. Why does it sound like that? We will discuss that as we get moving here. And then the second question I had was, why does it make this sound when I put the reverser forward? GG-1 run-up is excellent. It's smooth and it's very gentle, but it gets stronger the faster you go. Yeah, that's what it sounds like from the outside. pure electricity. So I thought about it, right? Why does this train sound the way it does? And what it really came down to is what this train is actually made of. The whole point of the GG-1 was speed, and to go fast and to be efficient at the same time, you need as little materials as possible. But this was the 1930s, so electric equipment was extremely heavy. So let's take a look at what we got here. So we've got the overhead energized catenary line delivering 11,000 volts of energy into the pantograph. The pantograph will then transmit this energy down into the train. And on board the train, there is a transformer which goes from the, and this is important, 11,000 volts, 25 hertz signal to the 600 volt traction motors running on 3-phase at the wheels, which happen to be in the classification that the Pennsylvania Railroad calls the G class. And because it's a double articulated body, you get GG, and it's the first one. So the only thing between the traction motors and the pantograph is a transformer to convert the 11,000 volt 25 hertz to 600 volts 25 hertz. And the question is, what are you hearing? The only thing that's always sounds like that when the pantograph is up is the transformer. So what you're actually hearing, just like in real life, if you go up to a transformer and you hear the transformer humming, that sound, that is actually the alternating current that you're hearing at twice the frequency. So the reason the GG-1 sounds like it does inside is because this is 50 hertz sawtooth, exactly twice the frequency, which is what you would get from a center tapped transformer. And if I bring up my sound generator, find this thing. That's weird. We're being put on the left track. Notice it gets louder as we draw more current. All right, so this is what a 50 hertz sawtooth waveform sounds like. Sound right. Am I right? That's what you're hearing in the GG-1. You're hearing the juice that flows through these power lines, which feed all electric trains on the Northeast Corridor. There's no advanced warning that we're getting a cap speed hold for 60 miles an hour. Now we have a clear signal. Look at that. 2,200 amps. And we're going to max this thing out soon. And here's exactly what I was talking about riding a skateboard behind a Jeep. It kind of does feel like that. Approach limited. Limited clear. Interesting. Must be switching tracks. Frankfurt Junction. This is where there was a loss of awareness accident here in those trees there. And now we can talk about accidents and the GG-1. The single accident to ever befell a GG-1 was actually occurred in Union Station, Washington Union Station to be precise. The incident occurred January 15, 1953, to train 173, the Federal from Boston. So as you know, coming into Union Station, there's a lot of signals going north of Union Station that restrict your speed. So 2.1 miles out, the engineer got his first restricting signal, and he was doing between 60 and 70. So what did he do? Of course, he closed the throttle and started applying the brakes. However, the train wasn't slowing down. So instead, he put it in emergency. And the emergency brake had no effect. So now what do? Sound the engine's horn, and let me tell you, the real sound that this train makes is magnificent, right? Imagine a yak, right? An animal, a yak, that's like 4 million pounds. What do you think a 4 million pound yak would sound like? Exactly what you would expect. This. Ain't that a beast of a horn? Oh, snap. I'm going 102 miles an hour in a GG-1. And it can go faster. I think I missed that one. Oh. Well, my assessment is that we went surfing. We nearly caused a derailment and the second incident involving the GG-1. I need to keep an eye on these signals. No more playing around. Of course, course, I went into emergency to save the train once I realized what was happening. Okay, so the actual incident, not the one that I was about to cause. A signalman who was in a nearby tower heard the train horn. And he noticed that it wasn't slowing down. It was going through at a hefty 60 miles an hour. And that's when he realized that there was a serious problem. So the signalman actually was able to phone ahead to the station master's office at the end of Union Station. Clear signal. That was 4876, by the way, that did that. So they reached the station master's office, and meanwhile the GG-1 kept on. I don't know what the verb should be for the GG-1 is. Kept on electricity, maybe? Went through several Union Station switches, much like what we did, albeit movable point frogs and whatnot, without derailing. Basically at full speed, not full track speed, authorized, full northeast corridor speed, as in over 60 miles per hour. Well, let's say 40 miles per hour. So the train came into Union Station and ran right into the bumper, demolished the bumper, hopped up onto the platform, right? The GG-1 actually came up onto the platform, continued across it. They cleared the station master's office. The GG-1 smashed into the station master's office, demolishing it. Smashed through the wall into the concourse. Entered the concourse, which is now currently the shopping center. Went over the second floor, where there was a basement underneath. And as soon as the GG-1 left the ground onto the first floor of Union Station, the floor could not hold the GG-1 and it collapsed, and the GG-1 fell into the basement, where it finally slammed into the opposite wall, stopping it. It had to smash into actual earth to stop it at 35 to 40 miles an hour. Clear signal. But thank goodness, because of the guy's horn and the fantastic horn of the GG-1, they were able to evacuate everyone on the concourse, and there were no fatalities, even on the train. So what did they do? They built a floor over it, and then held the inauguration of President Eisenhower above the GG-1. So what did they do? Right, this train that crashed, they dismantled it. Because there was no way to pull it out of the station. It was too heavy. They dismantled it, took the pieces out of the basement, brought it to Altoona, reassembled it, and returned it to revenue service. This train just cannot be destroyed. And it sits in the B&O Railroad Museum in Baltimore to this day. Ah, you might say, the GG-1 was faulted, but it actually wasn't. Listen to this. The accident was actually caused by a closed angle cock, which is a valve on the front and back of the locomotives and on every single individual car. Basically what it does is it seals the train brakes off from the environment so that they can charge. So what happens is if the angle cock is closed and the train is connected, you can apply the brakes, causing a reduction in pressure, and the pressure will not reduce out of the angle cock. On the third car, in proper placement, which did not allow the brake pipe to relieve. And so as a result, only the first 3 cars' brakes were being applied. And that was the only wreck of a GG-1, caused by the third car, not even the GG-1. That effectively makes this train faultless. GG-1 did endure one electromechanical breakdown, which was caused by a blizzard. And basically what it was is extremely cold temperatures caused blowing snow. And the blowing snow found its way up into the train, where it got at the transformer and the traction motors, which shorted out all the components. So they actually had to replace 40 units air intakes, and they moved the air intakes to basically underneath the pantographs, the highest point of the train. You might notice that I'm not taking the GG-1 above 100 miles per hour. That's because it was required by the Pennsylvania Railroad not to exceed 100 miles per hour. Not because it wasn't powerful enough, but because there were issues with the handling and it becoming too rough above 100 miles per hour. Here's what I was talking about. Speedometer pegged at 100. that's cap speed. Taking that one really seriously. Looks like we're gonna make a stop at Trent. Delaware River. Not quite as icy as it's supposed to be this time of year. Here's a sight that never happened. See, the problem is I have an aspect display here, but it doesn't come with a speed readout, so there's no way for me to understand what speed I'm being asked to maintain. Alright, ye enter my electric sounding train. Wow, you can even get on from this train from the front. Alright, I guess we are done. Look at how the amperage ramps up perfectly for maximum comfort. really wish that they had their mileposts here. Although, actually, this would be mileposts. Perfect. Well, although the GG-1 was only allowed to 100 miles an hour in revenue service, they did test one up to 125, so the heck, let's go to 110 and see what happens. GG-1 at 110 miles an hour. Complete with the Doppler shift. By the way, this is 1930s technology. And I ask you how we're moving forward in terms of speed. I would say we are not. Although Great Britain certainly is with HS2. Again, the important note that I want to make with the GG-1 is this catenary was designed for this train and vice versa. Even the placement of these signals is for this train. You notice how they're all slightly on the right? That's so that the GG-1 driver can see the signal. So I think there's one final question that needs to be answered. And that is, why were you only hearing the electricity when we were in neutral, but then as soon as we went into forward, you heard a fan kick on? What that is the oil-cooled loops of the transformer. The transformer is not very efficient, which is why it hums. That's because it's old. So it generated a lot of heat. Now, in order to keep it cold, they needed actual oil. It's the same oil that they use in the to run the boiler, as long as it doesn't run out. They circulate it through the pumps in an open cooling system, open cooling cycle essentially. And that whirring noise that you hear are the pumps running the oil cooler to keep the transformer cold. And it only needs to be on when you're in gear, because the transformer doesn't work very hard when you're just sitting still. That's the cab light, by the way. It's a light bulb. That's it. It's just a light bulb. Imagine seeing this out your window. Wow. Well, that definitely went through the train. Although this time it's not my fault. I love this view. It makes you seem like you're going so much faster than you really are. Looks like we're going to be making a stop at Metro Park. Wow, a real picture. Okay, for those that have never seen the Northeast Corridor in real life, that is what the 138 kilovolt lines actually look like in real life. And you can see that's a lot different than how they're depicted in the simulator. Real simulator. I think that when it was time to update to electric, they changed the Polar Express to the GG-1. It would look so appropriate. Better luck next time. Oh man, that's funny. Nice. This time it was convenient enough to warn me about the 60 in advance. By the way, if you try the GG-1 scenarios that come with this locomotive on the Northeast Corridor, let me warn you, they are hard. Like, they are hard to the point where I had to actually write up an acceleration table and a deceleration table to tell me exactly when to go to 45 psi brake cylinder pressure, and how much room I need to go from a speed limit of 80 to a speed limit of 60. And on top of all of that, I had to maintain the speed between 99.5 and 100% or 100 miles per hour in order to get it to work. That's how tight they are. They're almost as hard as you can be. I would call that 4 stars of difficulty. Not quite 5, but really, really, really tough. The difference between 4 stars of difficulty and 5 stars of difficulty is that I would say at 4 stars you don't have to use 100% throttle. I would say 5 stars of difficulty is as soon as you get the green light, you jam the throttle at 100% and you keep it that way until you reach line speed. When you reach line speed, then you immediately remove throttle to cruise. And vice versa for deceleration. Oh my gosh, look at that skateboard go. That's actually pretty funny, seeing that the train actually does bob and weave like that from an external perspective. Okay, advanced approach. I can't even tell what that's displaying because of the sun. Ah, perfect. It's an approach limited. Which I guess means that the signal has changed between 2 fixed signals. Therefore, I govern the movement based on the cab signal, which is approach limited, which is 45 miles per hour. However, I'm going to be prepared to see a lower indication because I am taking no chances after what happened earlier. No, incorrect indication. That is approach. Good thing I was taking no chances. That's approach. That's a 30. And we should be prepared to find the next signal displaying stop. just go? No. We're approach. Okay, that is limited clear. Ah, I see my track ends. Much better. Now I can increase speed to 45. Here's the Elizabeth S curve. Clear for high speed again. Possibly the last time. That is a horribly placed signal. That can cause derailments. It actually has on the British rail system before. That kind of signal placement. Oh my gosh, we're going up on that thing? We're gonna go for quite a ride. Roller coaster GG-1. I do not think this is a routine track. my gosh. GG-1 is not happy. You know what? I'm gonna keep decelerating. So for some reason I had the speed limit changed to 10 immediately, although there was no indication that it would change to 10. The funny thing is, I know of someone that has an air conditioner that when the compressor shuts off, it goes. So it's kind of funny that the GG-1 brake compressor or brake pipe does the exact same thing. Does a thing when the brakes are demanded to maximum. It's almost as if it's like sneering in disappointment. I think that's the sound of the GG-1 saying, I am disappointed. Oh man, look at that roller coaster. It's the path train. It looks like we'll be making a stop at Newark, or as the crazy guy from the Path World of Subways Episode 1 Train Simulator says, Newark. This is the New York Penn Station train. Next stop will be Newark. Yeah, there was no warning of that 10. Was it just me, or did that lady just glitch? I could have sworn I saw a glitch. Alright everybody, get on my cycloptic looking electric machine. We're done here. There's the PATH train flyover up there to Harrison. And then that's the Harrison station. That track there is incorrectly modeled. There should be a third rail. So again, in real life, you would be able to see the skyline of Manhattan from about there out to about there. Okay, so then the PATH train will go down there on its way to Journal Square. Out that way over the Hackensack River. The PATH bridge would be somewhere out that way. We can't see it right now. And on this side, yes, that is Interstate 95 coming into New York City. This place looks beautiful in winter. What's missing? Manhattan. That's a really poorly placed signal. I could barely read that in the GG-1. Alright guys, get out your scuba gear. This train is about to go diving. that's a proceed indication. You can confirm it over here. Oh yeah, and in those very hard GG-1 scenarios, you have to power yourself up this hill and then hit the brakes when you get to the top. And the problem with that is the GG-1 does not have regenerative braking, only air brakes, which means it can only eat, it cannot provide. That's a prepare to stop indication. The GG-1 is making its return to New York City. Coolers on. Coolers off. Thank you guys for joining me. The GG-1 is back in town.